The night had turned to ash and blood before Mary even understood what was happening. Her husband's shouts, the dog's furious barking, the crack of rifles tearing through the still air, all collided in her mind like the breaking of the world itself. When she opened her eyes, the cabin was burning. The scent of pine smoke and blood filled her lungs, and she heard the scream of her eldest boy fading into the dark. She reached for the baby in the cradle and pressed him to her chest, his warmth the only proof that something pure remained alive in that hell. The wind outside carried the whoops of the Apache, fierce and vengeful, their horses pounding the earth like drums of judgment. Every instinct told her to run, yet she hesitated, because running meant leaving behind everything she had built, everything she had loved. Mary stumbled out through the back of the cabin, clutching the infant close as sparks rained from the collapsing roof. Her bare feet found the cold dirt path leading to the ravine, the same path her husband had carved years ago when they'd first settled this land. Behind her, the flames rose higher, illuminating shadows of men on horseback circling like predators. She didn't look back, the sight would have broken her completely. The baby whimpered, and she covered his mouth with trembling fingers. Her heart pounded louder than her footsteps as she reached the creek, dropping to her knees to smear mud over her face and dress. She remembered what her husband had told her once, if they ever come, hide your scent and run north. So she did, with nothing but the child, the moon, and a prayer whispered through tears. As dawn broke, the world looked eerily calm, as if it hadn't witnessed horror hours before. Mary crouched behind a fallen pine, her eyes hollow from sleeplessness. The baby stirred, hungry, his cries threatening to betray them. She prayed the raiders had gone, but then she heard a distant whistle, an Apache call, sharp and certain. They were still searching. Her breath caught as she saw movement on the ridge above, two riders scanning the valley, their eyes like hawks. She pressed her cheek to the earth, praying they wouldn't see her. Every rustle, every cry of a crow, felt like a death sentence. Yet amid the terror, she made a promise to the child, I'll get you out. No matter what it takes, I'll get you out. It wasn't a mother's vow born of hope, it was forged in desperation, in the unbearable duty to preserve one small heartbeat when all others had fallen silent. By midday, hunger gnawed at her as fiercely as fear. She found a few berries near the riverbank, soft and sour, but they gave enough strength to keep moving. The land stretched endlessly before her, rolling hills scarred with smoke, patches of dry brush, the echo of distant cries. She thought of her husband, of the children who hadn't made it to the door. The images haunted her, her daughter reaching out through the flames, her eldest's voice calling, Mama, until it vanished in the roar. Guilt crushed her like a stone, she should have saved them all. But then she'd look down at the baby, his small fingers gripping her dress, and she'd know she couldn't afford grief. Not yet. The land was vast and cruel, and the Apache were still out there, hunters tracking the scent of fear. As the sun lowered, Mary followed the river northward, keeping to the shadows. The baby had stopped crying, his strength fading. She dipped a piece of cloth into the river and squeezed the cool water into his mouth. Somewhere in her memory, she heard her husband teaching their boys how to fish in that same river, his laughter filling the valley. That laughter was gone now, carried away by smoke and time. Every sound of hooves made her heart race, but she pressed on. The terrain grew rougher, and the thorns tore at her skirt until it hung in shreds. She wrapped the baby in the only blanket she'd managed to grab, a small blue one her daughter had sewn last winter, and whispered softly to him about safety, though she herself no longer believed in it. Night found her again, this time colder and darker. The stars were sharp against the sky, watching like unblinking eyes. Mary built no fire, fire meant light, and light meant death. Instead, she sat against a boulder, the baby nestled close, his faint breathing her only anchor to sanity. Far in the distance, she heard the eerie cry of a coyote, and beneath it, something worse, the echo of a war drum. The Apache were close, moving methodically, certain their prey could not vanish forever. Mary's heart sank. They wanted revenge, not just for land or cattle, but for blood spilled generations deep. She wondered if they would spare the child. Deep down, she knew the answer. So she held him tighter and prayed the stars would hide them for one more night. When morning came, she was weaker but determined. The forest thinned ahead into open plains, dangerous ground, yet the only path to the army outpost she'd heard about from travelers. If she could reach it, maybe the soldiers would help. Maybe civilization still existed somewhere beyond the wilderness. She tore strips from her skirt to wrap her bleeding feet and started walking, every step a small defiance against the universe that had tried to erase her. The baby's head rested against her shoulder, his breath shallow. "Hold on," she whispered, though her voice cracked with exhaustion. The sun burned her skin, the horizon shimmered like molten glass, and each step felt like walking toward a mirage. Hours later, she saw smoke, thin and gray, rising from a valley ahead. Her first instinct was hope, but then she froze. The smoke was too dark, too straight, it wasn't a campfire. It was a signal. They were marking her path. She ducked behind a dry bush, her eyes scanning the ridges. A lone Apache scout appeared on horseback, scanning the landscape with the patience of a predator. She stayed utterly still, not daring to breathe. The baby stirred, his small cry breaking the silence. The rider turned his head sharply. Panic surged through her veins like fire. She bit her lip until she tasted blood, praying the wind would carry the sound away. The scout paused, then rode on. Only when he disappeared did she allow herself to breathe again, shaking with relief that felt as fragile as glass. By twilight, Mary's body was failing her. Her vision blurred, her limbs heavy. She stumbled into a canyon where shadows stretched long and cool. The walls rose high, their orange stone whispering echoes of ancient voices. Here, the world felt untouched by men or mercy. She found a shallow cave and crawled inside, too weak to think of anything but sleep. The baby whimpered, his face pale, and she nursed him as best she could. Outside, the wind moaned through the canyon like a morning song. She pressed her forehead against the cool rock and cried quietly, not for herself, but for all that had been lost. Her tears mixed with dust, disappearing as quickly as they fell. That night, dreams came for her, cruel and vivid. She saw her husband standing by the fire, calling her name, holding out his hand. Behind him, her children laughed, their faces whole and shining. For a moment, she believed she had woken into heaven. But then the scene shifted, the fire roared higher, her husband's face turned to ash, and the laughter became screams. She jerked awake, heart pounding, the baby crying softly in her arms. The sound of horses echoed faintly outside the canyon. The Apache were near again. There would be no more rest, no more safety. She rose, her body trembling but her spirit hardened like steel. If they wanted her, they'd have to take her last breath with their own hands.